Galactic University's advanced xenobiology course had earned itself quite the reputation over the years. Not the good kind of reputation, mind you, the kind that made insurance companies weep and parents reconsider their offspring's career choices. Professor Ketmori had been teaching the course for 32 standard cycles, and in that time, the crystalline being had developed what could charitably be called unconventional pedagogical methods, what others called a thinly veiled death wish with academic credentials. Jackson slouched in the back row of Lecture Hall Delta 9, his feet propped up on the seat in front of him, completely absorbed in his datapad. The human exchange student had managed to sleep through the first 20 minutes of class, a feat made even more impressive by the fact that Ketmori's voice sounded like wind chimes having an argument with a synthesizer. Around him, the usual collection of galactic academic hopefuls fidgeted in their various ways. Bryn's gills fluttered nervously, Grex's chitinous plates clicked in agitation, and Yuki's tail twitched with barely contained anxiety. They all knew what day it was. Jackson, apparently, did not. "Attention, my delightfully naive students," Professor Ketmori announced, their 6 crystalline limbs glinting under the harsh lecture hall lights. The professor's voice carried that particular tone that educators reserved for moments when they were about to traumatize their pupils in the name of science. Today marks our midterm practical examination. A collective shiver ran through the assembled students. Well, through everyone except Jackson, who was currently engrossed in what appeared to be a heated debate about optimal pizza toppings on the university forums. The boy had priorities, apparently, and academic survival wasn't one of them. Ketamori's primary manipulator limb gestured toward a reinforced container that had been wheeled into the lecture hall during Jackson's impromptu nap. The thing was roughly the size of a small hover car and bore warning labels in 14 different galactic languages. Most of them boiled down to variations of danger, contents extremely hostile, and unauthorized opening will result in immediate death and/or dismemberment. Jackson glanced up from his datapad just long enough to notice the box, shrugged, and returned to his very important discussion about whether pineapple belonged on pizza. Spoiler alert, according to his current post, it absolutely did, and anyone who disagreed could fight him in the quad. "Now then," the professor continued, their tone taking on the cheerful quality of someone about to watch natural selection in action. "Who among you can tell me the primary characteristics of the Nexian shadow cub?" Bryn's webbed hand shot up so fast, she nearly launched herself from her seat. They're nocturnal ambush predators, Professor. Native to the shadow forests of Nexus Prime. Extremely territorial, highly aggressive, and her voice cracked slightly. And they can smell fear from half a kilometer away. Excellent, Bryn. And their hunting methodology? This time it was Grex who answered, his voice a nervous chittering symphony. Pack hunters, Professor. They use coordinated attacks to isolate prey. Their tentacle whiskers can detect bioelectrical signatures, making hiding virtually impossible. And their claws can slice through reinforced steel plating. Ketmori's crystalline form practically sparkled with approval. Outstanding! And tell me, class, what makes them particularly suitable for today's examination? The silence that followed was the kind of silence that happened right before very bad things occurred. It was the silence of prey animals realizing they were about to become educational aids. Every student in the room, except for one oblivious human in the back row, began calculating the distance to the nearest exit. Jackson, meanwhile, had moved on from pizza toppings to complaining about the university's Wi-Fi speed. His fingers tapped away at his datapad with the confidence of someone who had absolutely no idea he was about to become part of a very dangerous lesson plan. The Shadow Cubs, Professor Ketmori announced with theatrical flair, are considered one of the most efficient predators in this quadrant of the galaxy. They are fast, intelligent, utterly ruthless, and, most importantly for our purposes today, they are young enough to still possess their natural hunting instincts without the wisdom that comes with age. The professor's 6 limbs moved in a complex pattern that somehow managed to convey both academic enthusiasm and barely contained sadistic glee. Today, you will be demonstrating your understanding of predator-prey dynamics through direct observation and, how shall I put this, immersive experience. That was when the screaming started. Well, not actual screaming. That would come later. This was more of a collective intake of breath that sounded remarkably like a small atmospheric breach. Students began frantically looking around the lecture hall, mentally cataloging potential hiding spots, escape routes, and last will and testament compositions. Yuki's feline features had gone pale beneath her fur. "Professor, surely you don't mean—" "Oh, but I do." Ketmori's voice carried the kind of enthusiasm typically reserved for birthday parties and public executions. 3 juvenile shadow cubs, approximately 6 months old enough to hunt, young enough to be properly motivated by hunger. I may have forgotten to feed them this morning. Academic oversight, you understand. Jackson finally looked up from his data pad, but only because someone's panicked breathing was interfering with his concentration. He glanced around the lecture hall with the mild irritation of someone whose very important internet browsing had been interrupted by what appeared to be a collective anxiety attack. "What's everyone so worked up about?" he asked, his tone suggesting that mass panic was a significant overreaction to what was obviously just another boring lecture. "It's just some kind of practical exam, right?" The looks he received in response could have powered a small star. Bryn's eyes were wide enough to serve as satellite dishes. Grex had begun unconsciously backing toward the wall, his multiple limbs twitching in what could charitably be called pre-flight preparation. Even Yuki, who belonged to a species that had evolved from apex predators, looked like she was reconsidering her life choices. "Jackson," Bryn whispered, her voice carrying the kind of urgency typically reserved for impending natural disasters. "Shadow cubs are—" But Professor Ketmori had already moved to the containment unit. The professor's manipulator limbs worked at the locking mechanisms with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this many, many times before. Each click of a disengaging lock echoed through the lecture hall like a countdown to catastrophe. "Now, class, observe carefully," the professor announced. "Notice how your heart rates have increased. Notice the biochemical changes occurring in your various physiologies. This is the natural response of prey species when confronted with the prospect of encountering an apex predator. It's quite fascinating from an academic standpoint." Jackson blinked slowly, processing this information with all the urgency of someone trying to remember where they'd left their keys. "Wait, are you saying there are actual dangerous animals in that box?" The collective response was a sound that no single species should have been capable of making. A harmony of terror that somehow managed to blend gills, fluttering, chitin clicking, and what could only be described as existential feline despair. "Dangerous?" Professor Ketmori's crystalline laugh sounded like someone dropping a chandelier down a flight of stairs. "My dear Jackson, dangerous is such a limiting term. I prefer educationally challenging." The final lock disengaged with a click that seemed to echo in everyone's bones. The containment unit's door began to slide open with the slow, inevitable certainty of a really well-produced horror movie. A sound emerged from within, a sound that was part purr, part growl, and entirely designed by evolution to make intelligent beings question their life choices. "Remember, class," Professor Ketmori called out cheerfully, "the key to surviving this exercise is to demonstrate your understanding of predator psychology. Show fear, and they will hunt. Show aggression, and they will attack. Show intelligence, and you might live long enough to submit your final papers." The first shadow cub poked its head out of the containment unit. It was, Jackson had to admit, actually kind of cute. About the size of a large house cat, with sleek black fur that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and the kind of large amber eyes that suggested either profound wisdom or profound hunger. Possibly both. The tentacle whiskers that extended from either side of its face swayed gently, giving it an almost playful appearance, right up until it opened its mouth and revealed teeth that could serve as industrial cutting tools. The second cub emerged, followed immediately by the third. They moved with the fluid grace of shadows given form, their heads turning in perfect synchronization as they scanned the lecture hall. Their tentacle whiskers twitched and swayed, clearly picking up the various bioelectrical signatures of the terrified students. Every alien in the room had the same thought. This was how they were going to die. Death by educational aid. Their obituaries would read like academic footnotes. Jackson, however, was squinting at the cubs with the critical eye of someone evaluating potential pets. They're actually prettier than the pictures in the textbook. The whiskers are kind of neat. And that was when something extraordinary happened. The three shadow cubs, who should have been spreading out to begin their coordinated hunt, who should have been stalking the terror-frozen students with predatory precision, who should have been demonstrating exactly why their species was feared across multiple star systems, turned and looked directly at Jackson, their amber eyes locked onto the human with laser-like focus. Their tentacle whiskers stopped their random swaying and oriented themselves toward the back row. And then, in perfect unison, all three cubs tilted their heads in an expression that could only be described as curiosity. Professor Ketmori's crystalline form went completely still. In 32 cycles of conducting this particular practical examination, this had never happened. The cubs were supposed to spread out, select the weakest-looking prey, and begin the hunt. They were not supposed to fixate on one student like he was the most interesting thing in the galaxy. Jackson, blissfully unaware that he had just broken several fundamental laws of predator behavior, waved casually at the cubs. "Hey there, guys. You're the practical exam, huh?" The response was immediate and completely unprecedented in the annals of xenobiological education. All three shadow cubs began walking directly toward Jackson. Not stalking, not prowling, not exhibiting any of the predatory behaviors that had been documented in thousands of research papers. Just walking, like they were going to see an old friend. The lecture hall erupted into chaos. Students scrambled for higher ground, diving under desks, climbing onto chairs, and generally demonstrating that intelligence and grace under pressure were not necessarily related concepts. Bryn managed to wedge herself behind a waste receptacle. Grex had somehow achieved what could only be called wall climbing, despite the complete absence of appropriate appendages. Yuki had leaped onto a desk and was balancing there with the desperate poise of someone whose evolutionary ancestry was showing. Through it all, Jackson remained seated, watching the approaching cubs with the mild interest of someone observing an unexpected, but not particularly concerning development. "Jackson!" Bryn's voice reached a pitch that could have shattered crystal. "Get out of there. They're coming right for you." Jackson looked down at the cubs, who were now less than 3 meters away and showing absolutely no signs of predatory aggression. If anything, they looked hopeful. Their amber eyes were bright. Their tentacle whiskers were swaying in what seemed like excitement rather than threat assessment. And one of them had begun making a sound that was distinctly more purr than growl. "I think they like me," Jackson announced, his tone suggesting that this was both obvious and unremarkable. Professor Ketmori's voice cut through the chaos like a blade through butter. "That is impossible. Shadow cubs are apex predators. They do not like prey species. They hunt them." Jackson shrugged, apparently unbothered by the professor's denial of what was happening right in front of everyone's eyes. Maybe nobody told them that. And then the first cub reached his chair. What happened next would be talked about in xenobiology circles for decades to come. What happened next would require the complete rewriting of at least 6 textbooks and the hasty revision of approximately 43 research papers. What happened next would cause 3 different species to question everything they thought they knew about predator-prey relationships. What happened next was that the first shadow cub looked up at Jackson with those luminous amber eyes, opened its mouth to reveal a set of teeth that could cut through starship hull plating, and purred. Not the threatening rumble of a predator sizing up its next meal. Not the warning growl of a creature establishing territorial dominance. A purr. The kind of sound that suggested contentment, affection, and a deep-seated desire for belly rubs. Jackson blinked down at the cub with the expression of someone who had just discovered that his morning coffee tasted slightly different, but couldn't quite figure out why. "Well, hello there, little guy. You're friendly, aren't you?" The cub's response was to rub against Jackson's leg with the enthusiasm of a house cat greeting its favorite human after a long day at work. The tentacle whiskers that should have been analyzing Jackson's bioelectrical signature for optimal attack vectors were instead gently brushing against his shin in what could only be described as affectionate nuzzling. From her hiding spot behind the waste receptacle, Bryn's voice reached a frequency that probably violated several noise ordinances. "Jackson, those are not pets. They are evolutionary killing machines." "Huh," Jackson replied, reaching down to scratch behind the cub's ears. The creature immediately leaned into the touch, its purring increasing to a volume that could probably be heard in the next lecture hall. "Could have fooled me. This one seems pretty chill." Professor Ketmori's crystalline form had gone completely rigid, every facet reflecting light in patterns that suggested profound academic distress. In 32 cycles of teaching, the professor had seen students frozen in terror, students attempting futile escape, students fainting from sheer panic, and on one memorable occasion, a student who had tried to reason with the cubs using interpretive dance. But this was unprecedented. The second shadow cub had reached Jackson's chair and was currently attempting to climb into his lap. Its claws, which were designed to slice through reinforced armor plating, carefully retracted as it scrambled up his leg with the determined enthusiasm of a kitten seeking the perfect napping spot. "Okay, you're definitely friendly," Jackson observed, helping the cub settle across his thighs. The creature immediately began kneading his legs with its paws, claws safely sheathed, purring with such intensity that his datapad began vibrating in harmonic resonance. The third cub, not to be outdone by its siblings, had positioned itself against Jackson's other leg and was gazing up at him with an expression that could only be described as adoring. Its tentacle whiskers swayed gently, occasionally reaching up to brush against his free hand in what was unmistakably a request for attention. "This is impossible," Professor Ketmori whispered. their voice carrying the kind of existential crisis typically reserved for the moment when one's entire worldview collapses into rubble. This violates every known principle of xenobiology. They should be hunting. They should be establishing pack dynamics. They should be demonstrating the predatory behaviors that have made their species feared across half the galaxy. Jackson looked up from the two cubs who were now competing for prime lap real estate. Maybe they're just not hungry? You said you forgot to feed them, but maybe someone else did? I specifically ensured they had not been fed for 18 hours, the professor protested, their crystalline limbs flailing in academic distress. They should be ravenous. They should see you as the most convenient source of protein in this room. Well, they're definitely seeing me as something, Jackson replied, gently disentangling one cub's tentacle whisker from his shirt buttons. But I'm pretty sure it's not dinner. From various hiding spots around the lecture hall, the other students watched in fascination and terror as Jackson became the center of what could only be described as an interspecies cuddle session. The Shadow Cubs had arranged themselves around him like he was their personal heating unit, purring in harmonized contentment while occasionally nuzzling his hands or arms. Grex, who had somehow achieved a precarious perch on top of a storage cabinet, called down in a voice that cracked with strain. Jackson, whatever you do not make any sudden movements. You might trigger their hunting response. Jackson glanced up at him with the patience of someone explaining basic mathematics to a particularly slow child. Grex, I don't think these guys have a hunting response. At least not for me. Watch this. Before anyone could stop him, before anyone could scream a warning or faint from horror, or file the appropriate paperwork for witnessing a fellow student's voluntary suicide, Jackson stood up. The collective intake of breath from the hidden students could have powered a small atmospheric processor. This was it. This was the moment when the Cubs would finally reveal their true nature. This was when Jackson would discover that apex predators did not, in fact, appreciate being disturbed during what he had apparently mistaken for social bonding time. The Shadow Cubs looked up at him with mild curiosity, as if wondering why their new favorite person had decided to relocate. Then, with the fluid grace that made their species such effective hunters, they repositioned themselves around his legs and resumed their contented purring. One of them began rubbing against his knee with the kind of affection typically reserved for beloved family members. See, Jackson said, gesturing to his entourage of supposedly deadly predators. Totally friendly. I think someone's been exaggerating their reputation. Professor Ketmori's voice rose to a pitch that suggested their entire academic career was flashing before their crystalline eyes. Their reputation is based on documented evidence spanning 3 centuries. These creatures have been responsible for the deaths of trained hunters, experienced xenobiologists, and an entire research expedition on Nexus Prime. Jackson shrugged, apparently unmoved by this recitation of the Cubs' impressive resume. Maybe those people just didn't know how to approach them properly. You know, like dogs. If you're nervous around them, they pick up on it and act differently. These are not dogs, the professor shrieked, their voice climbing to frequencies that probably violated several galactic communications regulations. These are apex predators from a Class X death world. They do not require proper approach techniques. They require proper funeral arrangements. But even as the professor protested, Jackson was proving his point through practical demonstration. He had begun walking around the lecture hall, and the 3 Shadow Cubs were following him like he was the most fascinating thing they had ever encountered. Their tentacle whiskers swayed with what could only be described as happiness, and their amber eyes tracked his every movement with devoted attention. It was Yuki, who finally voiced what everyone was thinking, or rather, what everyone was desperately trying not to think. "Professor," she called from her perch on a desk, her feline features showing an expression that suggested she was questioning everything she thought she knew about predator behavior. What if Jackson is right? What if they're just friendly? The silence that followed was the kind of silence that occurred when fundamental assumptions about the universe were suddenly called into question. It was the silence of paradigms shifting, worldviews crumbling, and textbooks becoming obsolete in real time. Professor Ketmori's crystalline form went through a series of color changes that probably indicated something between academic excitement and complete mental breakdown. If these cubs are exhibiting non-aggressive behavior toward a potential prey species, the professor said slowly, as if working through the implications in real time, then we may be witnessing something that requires immediate documentation, analysis, and probably several emergency conferences with the Galactic Academy of Sciences. Jackson, meanwhile, had settled back into his chair with his 3 new companions, arranging themselves around him like he was their personal furniture. One cub had claimed his lap, another had positioned itself against his leg, and the third was attempting to figure out the optimal way to balance on the arm of his chair. "Does this mean I pass the practical exam?" he asked, scratching behind the ears of the cub in his lap. The creature's purring intensified to a level that was probably registering on seismic equipment in the adjacent buildings. The professor's response was a sound that no crystalline being should have been capable of making. Something between a laugh, a sob, and the noise a computer makes when it's trying to process impossible data. From around the lecture hall, students began cautiously emerging from their hiding spots. Bryn crept out from behind the waste receptacle, her gills fluttering with nervous curiosity. Grex managed to descend from his cabinet perch with only minimal dignity loss. Yuki leaped down from her desk with feline grace, though she maintained a respectful distance from the unprecedented scene. They all stood in a loose circle around Jackson and his entourage, watching as 3 of the galaxy's most feared predators competed for the attention of an oblivious human who was treating them like oversized house cats. "This is going to require so much paperwork," Professor Ketmori whispered, their voice carrying the exhaustion of someone whose entire understanding of the universe had just been turned upside down. So very, very much paperwork. Jackson looked up from the cub that was now attempting to groom his hair with its sandpaper tongue. "Paperwork for what?" "For rewriting everything we thought we knew about interspecies predator dynamics," the professor replied, already mentally composing the first of what would undoubtedly be many, many reports. "For explaining to the university administration why my practical examination turned into an impromptu xenobiology revolution. For figuring out how a human exchange student managed to domesticate 3 shadow cubs in the span of 15 minutes. Domesticate? Jackson blinked, apparently processing this term for the first time. "I wouldn't say I domesticated them. We're just hanging out." The cub in his lap chose that moment to look up at him with an expression of such pure adoration that it could have melted the hearts of spacefaring pirates. Its tentacle whiskers brushed against his face in what was unmistakably an affectionate gesture, and it began purring with such intensity that Jackson's shirt began vibrating. "Right," Professor Ketmori said flatly, their tone suggesting they had reached the acceptance stage of academic grief. "Just hanging out with apex predators, who should, by all known laws of nature, be using your internal organs as chew toys." Jackson shrugged, apparently seeing nothing unusual about this situation. "Maybe the laws of nature need an update," And that, as it turned out, was exactly what was about to happen. Within minutes of Professor Ketmori's frantic communications to the university administration, Lecture Hall Delta 9 had transformed from a site of academic instruction into something resembling a cross between a scientific research facility and a three-ring circus. The first to arrive was Dr. Emmett, head of the xenobiology department, who burst through the doors with the kind of urgency typically reserved for natural disasters or budget meetings. He stopped dead in his tracks when he saw Jackson casually reading his datapad while three shadow cubs used him as a combination furniture set and grooming station. "Sweet, merciful black holes," Dr. Emmett whispered, his voice carrying the reverent tone of someone witnessing a miracle or a catastrophe, possibly both. "Ketmori, please tell me you have some kind of explanation for this." Professor Ketmori's crystalline form had settled into what could only be described as a state of academic shock. "I wish I did, Emmett. I truly wish I did. According to every piece of research we have on shadow cub behavior, that human should be experiencing rapid conversion from living being to nutritional supplement. And yet," Dr. Emmett observed, watching as one of the cubs gently licked Jackson's hand with the kind of affection typically reserved for packmates, "he appears to be experiencing something closer to adoption." Jackson glanced up from his datapad, where he had apparently moved on to reviewing his class schedule for the next semester. "Hey, Dr. Emmett, these your pets? They're pretty cool, but someone should probably warn people that they're super affectionate. I've been getting weird looks from the other students." Dr. Emmett's response was a sound that existed somewhere between laughter and the noise a starship makes when its engines are failing. "Jackson, those are not pets. Those are apex predators that have been documented killing creatures 3 times your size." "Huh?" Jackson looked down at the cub that was currently using his leg as a pillow. "This one's been trying to groom my hair for the past 10 minutes. If that's how they kill things, they're really bad at it." Within the hour, the lecture hall had become a hub of scientific activity that would have made the Galactic Academy of Sciences weep with envy. Equipment had been wheeled in from at least 6 different departments: xenobiology, behavioral psychology, evolutionary analysis, chemical composition, bioelectric field measurement, and something called emergency containment protocol implementation that nobody really wanted to think about too closely. The problem, it quickly became apparent, was that nobody wanted to get close enough to actually conduct any meaningful research. "We need to take biological readings," announced Dr. Petra, the university's leading expert on predator psychology, from what she considered a safe distance of approximately 15 meters. But standard protocol requires proximity sensors placed within 2 meters of the subjects. "You're welcome to place them yourself," Professor Ketmori replied, with the kind of politeness that suggested they had no intention of getting any closer to the cubs than absolutely necessary. Dr. Petra's response was to produce a remote-controlled drone equipped with enough scanning equipment to analyze the molecular composition of a small moon. "I think we can manage this," and watched with mild amusement as the drone approached, its sensors whirring and clicking with mechanical precision. The shadow cubs looked up at the approaching device with the kind of curiosity that house cats typically reserved for new toys. One of them reached out with a tentacle whisker and gently batted at the drone's sensor array. "Fascinating," Dr. Petra murmured, studying her readings from behind the safety of a reinforced observation barrier that had been hastily erected around the perimeter of the hall. "Their stress indicators are at baseline levels: heart rate, respiration, bioelectrical activity, all within normal parameters for a relaxed state." "Relaxed?" Dr. Emmett's voice climbed an octave. They're apex predators in the presence of potential prey. They should be in full hunting mode. And yet, Dr. Petra continued, her instruments painting a picture that defied everything they thought they knew about shadow cub behavior. They're exhibiting classic pack bonding indicators. See how they position themselves around Jackson? That's protective clustering. They're treating him like a pack member. Professor Ketmori's crystalline form shifted through several color spectrums that probably indicated severe academic distress. Pack bonding requires extended social interaction over a period of weeks or months. These cubs met Jackson approximately 1 hour ago. Maybe they're just really efficient socializers, Jackson suggested, gently disentangling a cub's tentacle whisker from his shirt pocket. The creature had been systematically exploring his clothing with the thoroughness of a security inspection, apparently fascinated by the concept of pockets. Dr. Emmett began pacing with the kind of nervous energy that suggested his entire understanding of xenobiology was crumbling in real time. There has to be an explanation. Predator behavior doesn't just change. There are evolutionary imperatives at work here. Millions of years of genetic programming don't get overridden by casual friendliness. That was when Dr. Helena from the Chemical Analysis Department made an announcement that would change everything. "I'm reading some very interesting pheromone signatures," she called out from behind her array of atmospheric analyzers. "The human is producing a complex cocktail of chemical compounds that I've never seen before." Chemical compounds? Professor Ketmori's attention snapped to her with laser-like focus. What kind of chemical compounds? Dr. Helena's equipment beeped and whirred as it processed atmospheric samples with the precision of a master chef analyzing a complex recipe. Well, that's the fascinating part. The compounds themselves aren't unusual. They're standard human pheromones related to calm emotional states, social bonding, and what appears to be parental affection. The silence that followed was the kind of silence that occurred when pieces of a cosmic puzzle suddenly clicked into place with the inevitability of a perfectly designed machine. Parental affection? Dr. Emmett's voice carried the tone of someone who was beginning to see the shape of something impossible. Are you saying the cubs are reading Jackson's pheromone signature as maternal? That's impossible, Professor Ketmori protested, but their voice lacked its earlier conviction. Human pheromones should have no effect on Nexian shadow cubs. They're from completely different evolutionary trees, different planets, different biological systems entirely. Dr. Helena's equipment continued its analysis, producing readouts that seemed to defy several fundamental principles of biochemistry. Unless, she said slowly, the chemical signatures are similar enough to trigger a cross-species response. Let me run a comparison analysis. What happened next would require the emergency convening of 3 separate academic conferences and the hasty revision of the Galactic Encyclopedia of Interspecies Biology. "Oh," Dr. Helena whispered, staring at her readouts with the expression of someone who had just discovered that 2 + 2 actually equaled fish. "Oh my, this is remarkable." "What?" Dr. Emmett demanded, his patience finally reaching its breaking point. "What did you find?" Dr. Helena looked up from her instruments with the kind of expression typically reserved for religious experiences or severe head injuries. "The pheromone signature Jackson is producing. It's not just similar to Nexian shadow cub maternal indicators. It's nearly identical. And that's not the remarkable part." She gestured to her secondary analysis array, which was currently processing what appeared to be several dozen separate chemical breakdowns. "I ran the signature through the xenobiological database. Jackson's pheromone profile shows compatibility markers for Well, for approximately 68 different predator species from across the galaxy. The collective response was a sound that no single species should have been capable of producing. A harmony of scientific minds simultaneously reaching the same impossible conclusion. You're saying, Professor Ketmori said carefully, that this human is accidentally producing chemical signatures that convince multiple species of apex predators to treat him as a maternal figure. Not just maternal, Dr. Helena corrected, her voice carrying the excitement of someone who had just made a discovery that would rewrite textbooks. Pack leader, territory holder, I am family, and I will protect you to every predator in the immediate vicinity. Jackson looked up from the cub that was currently attempting to build a nest in his hair. Is that why they're being so clingy? Because honestly, it's kind of sweet, but I do have other classes today. Dr. Emmett turned to stare at his student with the expression of someone who had just realized that the mild-mannered exchange student sitting in his lecture halls was actually a walking, talking violation of everything they thought they knew about interspecies relationships. Jackson, he said slowly, have you ever noticed animals acting unusually around you before? Jackson shrugged, apparently seeing this as a perfectly normal question. I mean, yeah, dogs love me. Cats won't leave me alone. There was this one time on vacation when a whole pack of wild something or others followed me back to the hotel. But that's pretty normal, right? Animals, just like some people better than others, followed, was broken only by the sound of several xenobiologists simultaneously reevaluating their entire understanding of human-animal interactions. A pack of wild something or others, Professor Ketmori repeated flatly. Yeah, they were kind of like big lizard cat things with too many teeth. Really friendly, though. The hotel staff seemed kind of freaked out about it. Jackson paused, considering. Come to think of it, people seem to get really worried when animals like me. I always figured they were just jealous. Dr. Emmett slowly sat down in the nearest chair, his face cycling through approximately 15 different expressions before settling on something that could only be described as the look of a man whose entire academic career has just been turned upside down by a student who thinks apex predators are lizard cat things. Jackson, he said carefully, I think we need to have a very long conversation about your interaction history with local wildlife. But before Jackson could respond, Dr. Helena's equipment began producing a new series of readings that made her previous discoveries look mundane by comparison. Oh no, she whispered, staring at her atmospheric analysis with growing alarm. Oh no, no, no. What now? Dr. Emmett asked, though his tone suggested he wasn't sure he wanted to know. Dr. Helena looked up from her instruments with the expression of someone who had just realized they were standing at ground zero of a potentially galaxy-changing event. Jackson's pheromone signature. It's not just affecting the shadow cubs, it's spreading through the atmospheric recycling system. She gestured to her readings with hands that were beginning to shake with what could have been excitement or terror. Every predator species currently housed in the university's xenobiology research facilities is showing elevated interest in this sector of the campus, and they're all heading this way. The implications hit everyone simultaneously. The university's research facilities housed specimens from dozens of different worlds, creatures that had been carefully contained and studied precisely because they were too dangerous for casual interaction. And all of them, apparently, were about to come calling on Jackson. How long do we have? Professor Ketmori asked, their crystalline form cycling through color patterns that suggested immediate panic. Dr. Helena checked her readings one more time, as if hoping the numbers would somehow change through force of will. Based on the response time we've observed with the shadow cubs and the atmospheric distribution rate, maybe 20 minutes before the first arrivals. Jackson looked around at the assembled scientists with the expression of someone who was beginning to suspect that his day was about to become significantly more complicated than he had planned. "So," he said slowly, "should I cancel my afternoon classes?" What happened in the next 20 minutes would be discussed in academic circles for generations, debated in xenobiological conferences across the galaxy, and eventually lead to the establishment of an entirely new field of study called human-predator compatibility dynamics. It started with the Corvin frost wolves from the Arctic Studies Wing. They arrived first, padding through the corridors with the silent grace of creatures evolved to hunt in perpetual winter. Security footage would later show them bypassing 3 different containment protocols and somehow managing to operate a manual door release, skills that wolves from an ice planet should not have possessed. The frost wolves entered the lecture hall, took one look at Jackson, and promptly arranged themselves in a protective semicircle around his chair. Their pack leader, a magnificent specimen with ice-blue eyes and fangs designed for crushing frozen bone, approached Jackson with the cautious respect typically reserved for encountering a superior alpha. Jackson looked down at the wolf and said, "Well, aren't you gorgeous?" The wolf's response was to rest its massive head on Jackson's knee and emit a rumbling sound that was part growl, part purr, and entirely devoted. By the time the Altarian Razorhawks arrived, somehow having escaped their aerial containment facility, Jackson had accumulated what could only be described as a menagerie of death. The hawks, whose talons could slice through reinforced plasteel, landed on the backs of his chair and began preening his hair with the delicate care of professional stylists. The crystal serpents from Vega 3 slithered in next, their diamond-hard scales catching the lecture hall lights as they wound themselves around the chair legs like living jewelry. The venom dripping from their fangs could dissolve metal, but they seemed more interested in gently booping Jackson's ankles with their snouts. Professor Ketmori had given up on crystalline color changes and settled into a permanent state of academic catatonia. "This violates everything," the professor whispered. "Everything we know about territorial boundaries, species compatibility, predator hierarchies." "Maybe what we know is wrong," Dr. Emmett interrupted, watching as a pack of Taraxian shadow stalkers, creatures that had never been successfully domesticated by any species, began organizing themselves around Jackson's chair like they were planning the galaxy's most dangerous group hug. It was Chancellor Oren who finally voiced what everyone was thinking. The rock-based administrator had arrived to assess what his security team had described as a code-red biological containment breach, and instead found what looked like the universe's most unlikely petting zoo. "What exactly are we looking at here?" Chancellor Oren asked, his granite features showing the kind of confusion typically reserved for budget meetings that actually made sense. Dr. Helena looked up from her instruments, which were now producing readings that would require the invention of new scientific terminology. "We're looking at a complete paradigm shift in our understanding of interspecies relationships," she announced. "Humans don't just coexist with predator species. They accidentally domesticate them through evolutionary coincidence." Jackson, who now had 3 shadow cubs in his lap, 2 frost wolves at his feet, 4 razor hawks in his hair, and several crystal serpents draped around his shoulders like the galaxy's most dangerous scarf, looked up with the expression of someone who was starting to suspect that his exchange student experience might be slightly more complicated than advertised. "So," he said, gently untangling a serpent that had become fascinated with his shirt buttons, "does this mean I get extra credit?" The collective response was a sound that transcended species barriers, the universal noise of minds being comprehensively blown. And that was when Jackson stood up, carefully balancing his entourage of apex predators, and made an announcement that would echo through academic history. I hate to break up the party, but I really do have galactic economics at 3, and Professor Hendricks gets cranky if we're late. Plus, I think these guys need some exercise. He began walking toward the door, followed by what could only be described as a parade of the galaxy's most dangerous creatures, all of whom were treating him like he was their favorite person in the universe. As Jackson reached the doorway, he paused and looked back at the assembled scientists. Oh, and Professor Ketmori? I think I'll take that passing grade on the practical exam. And with that, Jackson walked out of the lecture hall, trailed by enough lethal wildlife to conquer a small planet, heading off to his next class, like this was just another Tuesday at Galactic University. Behind him, Professor Ketmori finally found their voice. I'm going to need so much paperwork for this.
The holographic tactical display flickered with angry red markers across 3 star systems. Admiral Theodore Garrison slammed his fist on the command console, making the junior officers jump. Get me any ship. I don't care if it's a cargo hauler with lasers duct taped to the hull. Just get something with engines out there now. The Situation Room aboard the orbital command station Sentinel Prime buzzed with controlled chaos. 3 dozen officers worked frantically at their stations, trying to coordinate a rescue that seemed increasingly impossible. Mining Colony 779 on the outer rim of the Casterian belt had gone dark 12 minutes ago, right after their emergency beacon transmitted a single terrifying message. Raiders, heavy weapons, need immediate assistance. Lieutenant Commander Patricia Holloway looked up from her station, her voice cutting through the noise. Admiral, all patrol vessels are at least 40 minutes out. The Dauntless is refueling at Station Echo. The Thunderstrike is in dry dock for engine repairs, and our interceptor squadrons are dealing with that pirate situation in the Meridian sector. 40 minutes? Garrison's weathered face went pale. Those colonists don't have 40 minutes. There are 800 civilians on that rock, including families. A young ensign at the communications array raised his hand tentatively. Sir, there's one ship responding to the distress call. Finally, what do we have? Well, sir, it's identifying as Phantom 7, but that designation doesn't match any active vessel in our registry. Garrison spun toward the tactical display. Show me. The hologram zoomed in, revealing a single blue dot moving at impossible speed toward the mining colony. The ship's transponder signature was bizarre, showing configurations that shouldn't exist on any modern vessel. What class is it? Garrison demanded. The ensign's fingers danced across his console. Sir, if these readings are correct, it's a Devastator-class battlecruiser. The room went silent. Every officer turned to stare at the display. That's impossible, Garrison said slowly. All Devastator-class ships were decommissioned 5 years ago. They're museum pieces. Not this one, apparently, Holloway muttered, studying her readouts. Sir, whoever's flying that thing has modified it extensively. The engine output is 30% above standard specifications, and the weapon systems, these configurations shouldn't be possible. Get me a channel to that ship, Garrison ordered. Static filled the speakers before a woman's voice cut through, calm and professional, despite the obvious strain of high-speed maneuvering. Phantom 7 to Sentinel Command. I have the distress signal. Estimated time to colony, 6 minutes. Phantom 7, this is Admiral Garrison. Identify yourself and return to nearest station immediately. You are not authorized for combat operations. With respect, Admiral, those colonists don't have time for authorization codes. Phantom 7 out. The channel went dead. Get her back! Garrison roared. "She's not responding, sir." "She's running silent except for emergency frequencies." Garrison watched the blue dot streak across space at speeds that should have torn the old battlecruiser apart. "Who the hell is flying that thing?" Holloway pulled up archived records, her expression growing more confused by the second. "Sir, Phantom 7 was the call sign of Commander Cassandra Thorne." "Thorne?" "She was court-martialed after the Centauri incident." "Yes, sir." "Stripped of rank and discharged for conducting 17 unauthorized rescue operations in hostile space." The memory hit Garrison like a physical blow. The Centauri incident. 3 years ago, when bureaucratic red tape and political considerations had left 43 civilian transports stranded in contested space. Thorne had violated direct orders, stolen a battlecruiser from the scrapyard, and executed a rescue operation that military historians still studied. She'd saved over 12,000 lives. She'd also ended her career. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, "Phantom 7 is decelerating hard. She's entering the colony's orbit. Put it on main display." The hologram shifted to show real-time sensor data from the mining colony. 3 raider vessels, sleek and predatory, were positioned around the main habitat dome. Their weapons ports glowed with charging energy. Then Phantom 7 dropped out of hyperspace like a thunderbolt. The old Devastator-class battlecruiser was a thing of legend, even in retirement. 300 meters of armor and firepower, designed in an era when space combat was brutal and direct. But this one had been modified. Extra armor plating welded over vulnerable sections. Weapon arrays reconfigured in patterns that spoke of hard-learned lessons, and engine modifications that no sane engineer would approve. "She's broadcasting on all frequencies," the communications officer reported. Thorne's voice filled the command center, cold and precise. "Attention raider vessels, you have 10 seconds to disengage and leave this system. This is your only warning." The raiders' response was predictable. All 3 ships opened fire simultaneously. What happened next would be discussed in military academies for decades. Phantom 7 rolled, a maneuver that should have been impossible for a ship that size. The raiders' shots passed through empty space as the battlecruiser's own weapons came online. Not the standard firing pattern that any Academy graduate would recognize, but something else. Something that spoke of 3 years of fighting alone in the dark corners of space where nobody came to help. The first raider ship exploded in a brilliant flash as Phantom 7's main guns found their mark with surgical precision. The battlecruiser was already moving, using the explosion's debris field as cover while lining up her next shot. "Jesus Christ," someone whispered. "She's using combat maneuvers from the old wars." The second raider tried to flee, pouring power into their engines. Phantom 7's secondary batteries spoke once. The raider's engines went dark, the ship tumbling helplessly through space, completely disabled but with life support intact. The third raider was smarter. They dove toward the colony, using it as a shield. "She can't fire," Holloway said, "not without risking the colonists." But Thorne had learned tricks that weren't in any manual. Phantom 7 accelerated hard, coming in at an angle that defied conventional wisdom. At the last second, she fired a single torpedo, not at the raider, but at an asteroid in the belt. The explosion sent fragments racing through space at precise angles. The raider pilot never saw it coming. Asteroid shrapnel tore through their shields and engines, leaving them dead in space. "Colony 779, this is Phantom 7. Thorne's voice crackled over the emergency channel. "Threat neutralized. Medical assistance teams are advised to prep." "I'm trying, sir, but she's using some kind of stealth modification. She's off our screens." Garrison stared at the tactical display showing the saved colony, the disabled raiders, and the empty space where Phantom 7 had been. "Pull everything we have on Cassandra Thorne. Everything." 3 hours later, Garrison sat in his office reviewing files that painted a picture of the finest combat pilot the fleet had ever produced. Cassandra Thorne had joined at 18, the daughter of asteroid miners who'd been killed by raiders when she was 12. She'd survived alone on a damaged mining rig for 6 weeks before rescue arrived, keeping the life support running with nothing but determination and ingenuity. Her academy scores were legendary. Her combat record was flawless. 23 confirmed raider kills, 14 successful rescue operations, 3 commendations for valor. Then came the Centauri incident. The official report was damning. Fleet Command had decided that the 43 civilian transports in contested space were acceptable losses. The political situation was too delicate, the risk to military assets too great. They'd ordered all ships to stand down. Thorn had been commanding the Retribution, a Devastator-class battlecruiser scheduled for decommissioning. She'd received the stand-down order, acknowledged it, and then done something unprecedented. She convinced her entire crew to go rogue with her. "We're not leaving those people to die," she told them, according to the testimony. "Anyone who wants to leave can take the escape pods now. No judgment, no consequences. But I'm going, with or without you." Her entire crew had stayed. What followed was 18 hours of continuous combat operations. The Retribution had fought through 3 raider fleets, an automated defense grid, and a meteor storm to reach those transports. They'd saved 12,347 lives. The cost had been significant. The Retribution was so damaged, it had to be scrapped. 14 of Thorn's crew had been killed, another 30 wounded, and when they'd returned, instead of heroes' welcomes, they'd faced court-martial. The crew had been given reduced sentences, most just discharged with honor. But Thorn, as commanding officer, had taken full responsibility. She'd been stripped of rank, discharged without honor, and banned from any military installation. Yet here she is, Garrison muttered, reading the next file. Still saving lives. Holloway knocked and entered. "Sir, you need to see this." She handed him a data pad showing unofficial reports from the past 3 years. 37 unexplained rescues in situations where official help had been deemed too risky or too politically complicated. Distress calls answered by a ship that didn't officially exist, piloted by someone who wasn't supposed to have access to military communications. "She's been monitoring our channels," Holloway said. "Every time we make the decision to abandon someone, she shows up. In a decommissioned battlecruiser that should be in a museum. Sir, I did some checking. The Devastator-class ship Invincible went missing from the scrapyard at Titan Station 2 years ago. They assumed it had been stolen for parts, but someone stole an entire battlecruiser and has been maintaining it in combat-ready condition." Garrison shook his head in amazement. "Where does she even get supplies? Ammunition? Fuel?" "Unknown, sir, but I'd guess she has contacts among the merchant fleets. A lot of civilian captains owe her their lives." Garrison's communicator buzzed. "Sir, we have a situation. Research station in the Kronos Nebula is under attack. It's deep in the radiation field. Our shields can't handle the exposure for more than..." "Let me guess," Garrison interrupted. "Phantom 7 is already responding." "Yes, sir. She entered the nebula 3 minutes ago." Garrison stood up. "I want a full tactical feed. And get me Captain Morrison." "Sir, Captain Morrison is..." "I know exactly where Morrison is. Get him." 20 minutes later, Captain Robert Morrison stood at attention in Garrison's office. He was older now, grey at the temples, but still carried himself like the decorated officer he'd once been. "You were Thorn's executive officer during the Centauri incident," Garrison said without preamble. "Yes, sir. You stayed with her. Cost you your career." Morrison's expression didn't change. "It cost me my commission. It didn't cost me my integrity, sir." "You've been in contact with her." It wasn't a question. Morrison remained silent. "Captain, I'm not here to prosecute anyone. I need to understand something. How does one person keep a battlecruiser operational without any official support?" Morrison studied the Admiral for a long moment. "Permission to speak freely, sir." "Granted. She doesn't do it alone. There are hundreds of us, maybe thousands. Former crew members, civilians she's saved, merchant captains who remember when she came out of nowhere to protect their convoys. We don't have meetings or an organization. We just help when we can. You're telling me there's an unofficial network supporting a rogue battlecruiser. I'm telling you that when someone saves your life, or your family's lives, or your entire colony, you remember. And when that someone needs a few tons of reaction mass, or some spare parts or ammunition that fell off a transport manifest, well, things happen. That's illegal. So is abandoning 800 colonists because the paperwork isn't right. The two men stared at each other across the desk. She's in the Kronos Nebula right now, Garrison said finally. The radiation will eat through her shields in minutes. Not her shields, Morrison said with a slight smile. Then it was declared energy. She looked like a ship wrapped in lightning. My God, someone whispered. She's using the radiation as a weapon. It was true. Phantom 7 was channeling the nebula's energy through her shields and into her weapon systems. When she fired, it wasn't just plasma beams that struck the raiders, but concentrated stellar radiation that overwhelmed their systems. The first raider ship's computers simply shut down, every circuit fried. The ship drifted helplessly into the nebula's depths. The second and third raiders tried to coordinate their attack, but Thorn was already moving. The battlecruiser danced through space with impossible grace, using gravitational eddies in the nebula that she'd somehow mapped. She was fighting on her chosen ground with advantages the raiders couldn't match. The fourth raider was smarter. They grabbed the research station with magnetic grapples, using it as a hostage. "Stand down or we destroy the station," their captain broadcast. Thorn's response was immediate. "Research Station Prometheus. All personnel move to the central core immediately. You have 30 seconds. "What's she doing?" Holloway asked. Morrison smiled grimly. "Watch." Phantom 7 fired, but not at the raider. Her shots struck the station's outer hull at precise points, creating a pattern that made no sense until... "She's performing surgical separation," the tactical officer gasped. "She's cutting the station apart." The outer sections of the research station, the ones the raider had grappled, separated from the central core where the personnel had gathered. The raider ship, suddenly attached to massive chunks of spinning metal, lost control. Their pilot tried to compensate, but it was too late. They spun into the nebula's gravitational well. Phantom 7 moved in, extending docking clamps to the station's central core. "Research Station Prometheus, prepare for emergency evacuation. We're getting you out of here." "Phantom 7, this is Dr. Elizabeth Kane." A woman's voice crackled over the comm. "Our hull is compromised. We won't survive acceleration." "Already on it, Doc. I'm extending my shields around you. It'll be bumpy, but you'll make it." The battlecruiser's modified shields expanded, encompassing the damaged station core. Together, they began moving toward the nebula's edge. Communications officer called. "I'm picking up multiple distress signals. The raider crews are calling for help. Their ships are dead in the nebula." Garrison waited to see what Thorn would do. There was a long pause. Then Phantom 7 changed course slightly. Drone beacons fired from her hull. "Better hurry. Those beacons long in this radiation." "She's saving the people who just tried to kill her," Holloway said in amazement. "She always does," Morrison said quietly. "Every life matters to her, even the enemies." An hour later, Phantom 7 emerged from the nebula with the research station's core attached like a remora to her hull. Garrison watched as she carefully transformed her anymore. "I'm just someone with a ship." "Then what should I call you?" A pause. "Ghostworks. It's what most people call me anyway. The ghost who shows up when the fleet won't." "That's not fair, isn't it? How many distress calls have you ignored this month because of politics or risk assessment or budget concerns?" Garrison didn't answer. They both knew the number. "Ghost, what you're doing is unsustainable. One person, you can't save everyone." "No," she agreed, "but I can save more than nothing. Let us help. Come back. We can work something out." "Like you worked something out after Centauri? Thanks. But I've seen your help. I'll stick with my way. Your way is what if there was another way?" that go missing, communication in just the last few hours. Admiral would kill for, and because, he paused, choosing his words carefully, because my daughter was on one of those Centauri transports. Silence filled the channel. I never knew that, Thorne said softly. Emily Garrison, chilling with her mother to meet me at the frontier station. You saved them both. Admiral Theodore, after what you did, you've earned the right to use my first name, E. Battles. But it was clean, well-maintained, loved. A woman stood beside the ship, running her hand along its hull like someone that had seen too much. Cassandra Thorne looked older than her 34 years, but she stood straight and proud. Admiral, she said without turning around. Ghost, he replied, respecting her choice of name. The supplies were appreciated. What supplies? I don't know anything about supplies. She turned then, and he saw the ghost of a smile. Of course not. I have something for you. He held out a small device. Quantum encryption key. It'll let you monitor our emergency channels without being traced, so you know when we can't respond to something. She took it, weighing it in her hand. This is dangerous for you. Less dangerous than having civilians die because we're following protocols written by people who've never seen combat. The bureaucrats won't like it. The bureaucrats don't have to know. Officially, you don't exist. Phantom 7 is a ghost story, a legend that raiders tell each other to explain their losses. And unofficially, you're the best damn pilot I've never heard of, flying a ship that doesn't exist, saving lives that don't make it into reports. She pocketed the device. I can work with that. There's one condition. Her eyes narrowed. What? Stay alive. The galaxy needs its ghosts. I'll do my best. No, Garrison said firmly. Promise me, no unnecessary risks, no suicide runs. The goal is to save lives, not throw yours away. Some lives are worth the risk. All lives are worth the risk, including yours. They stood there in the dim light of the docking bay, two warriors from different generations understanding each other perfectly. I should go, she finally said. Got a distress call from the outer reaches, settlers under attack. Our nearest ship is 2 hours away. Good thing I'm only 30 minutes out then. She started up the boarding ramp, then paused. Theodore? Yes? Your daughter, Emily. She became a pilot, didn't she? How did you know? I keep track of the kids from Centauri. Most of them went into service. They remember who came for them when nobody else would. She wants to meet you. No, she doesn't. She wants to meet the hero from her childhood. That person doesn't exist. I'm just someone with a ship and a bad habit of not following orders. You're more than that. Maybe. But this works better if I stay a ghost. Ghosts can do things heroes can't. She disappeared into her ship. Moments later, Phantom 7's engines roared to life and the battlecruiser slipped out of the docking bay and into the night. Garrison watched until the ship vanished into hyperspace, then walked back to his office. On his desk was a report about the evening's activities. He signed it without reading. Docking Bay 7 closed for maintenance. No unusual activity. Over the following months, a pattern emerged. When official fleet responses were impossible, when the risks were too high or the politics too complicated, distress calls would still be answered. A battle cruiser that didn't exist would appear, deal with the threat, and vanish. No reports were filed, no records kept, but stories spread. Merchant captains whispered about the ghost ship that had saved their convoys. Colonists told tales of the Phantom that appeared when all hope was lost. Raiders learned to fear the name Phantom 7, some even abandoning attacks at the mere rumor of its presence. In the fleet, a new unofficial protocol emerged. When a situation arose that couldn't be handled through official channels, someone would mention that it was a real phantom situation. Resources would be accidentally misplaced, channels would be left open, and somewhere in the dark between stars, a ghost would hear the call. Emily Garrison, now a lieutenant flying interceptors, never officially met Cassandra Thorne. But once, during a particularly fierce battle with raiders, when her squadron was overwhelmed and calling desperately for backup that was too far away, a Devastator-class battlecruiser had appeared from nowhere. The old ship had torn through the raider fleet with a precision that bordered on artistic, saving Emily's squadron without losing a single pilot. As Phantom 7 departed, a private message appeared on Emily's console. "Your father says you fly like your mother. She'd be proud." Emily had tried to respond, but the ghost was already gone. Captain Morrison retired a year later, his pension mysteriously supplemented by accounting errors that nobody seemed interested in correcting. He bought a small transport ship and started a courier service, specializing in delivering supplies to remote colonies. Sometimes his manifests didn't quite match his cargo, and sometimes he made deliveries to coordinates that didn't officially have anything there. He never saw Thorne directly, but sometimes he'd find notes in his empty cargo holds. "Thanks for the ammunition. The settlers at Colony 9 send their regards." The Xeranian peace talks, which had been stalled for years, suddenly resumed after a Xeranian diplomatic vessel was rescued from raiders by an unknown battlecruiser. The Xeranian ambassador had been so impressed by the pilot's skill and mercy, she'd disabled the raiders without killing them, that he'd insisted on adding a provision to the treaty. Any ship operating under the designation Phantom 7 would have free passage through Xeranian space. When asked why, the ambassador had simply said, "Some debts transcend politics." Admiral Garrison kept a special file in his personal safe. It contained no official documents, just reports from grateful colonists, thankful merchant captains, and alive soldiers who shouldn't have been. The file grew thicker each month, a testament to the work of someone who didn't officially exist. 3 years after their meeting in Docking Bay 7, Garrison received an encrypted message. "Major raider fleet massing near Elysium Colony. Too many for one ghost. Could use some help from the living." Garrison studied the tactical data Thorne had sent. She was right. This wasn't a raid. It was an invasion force. 40 raider ships, possibly more, all converging on a colony of 50,000 civilians. "But Elysium is in disputed space," Holloway pointed out when he showed her the data. "We can't officially—" "I know what we can't officially do," Garrison interrupted. "But what if our patrol routes happen to take us near that area? What if we happen to be conducting training exercises?" Holloway smiled. "That would be quite a coincidence, sir. Wouldn't it just?" 3 days later, Task Force 7, a designation that didn't appear on any official roster, assembled at the edge of disputed space. 12 ships, all crewed by volunteers who understood they were operating outside official sanction. And at the center of the formation, like a battle-scarred queen among knights, was Phantom 7. "Ghost, this is Garrison. Nice to have you with us." "Nice to have backup for once, Theodore. Been a while since I flew in formation." "You sure you remember how?" "Like riding a bicycle. If bicycles were 300 meters long and armed with enough firepower to crack a moon." Despite the tension, chuckles echoed across the comm channels. The raider fleet was larger than intelligence had suggested. 53 ships, arranged in attack formation, bearing down on Elysium Colony. They'd expected no resistance, maybe a few police cutters at most. They hadn't expected to face a ghost and her friends. "All ships," Garrison commanded, "engage at will. Protect the colony." What followed was the largest space battle in the sector for a decade. The raiders had numbers, but Task Force 7 had something more valuable. Pilots who'd chosen to be there, who fought not for pay or orders, but because it was right, and they had Phantom 7. Thorne flew like she was born to it, the old battlecruiser responding to her commands with a grace that defied its age and size. She carved through the raider formation, drawing fire away from the smaller fleet ships, her modified shields holding against impacts that should have shattered them. "Ghost, you're taking too much fire," Garrison warned. "That's the idea. They're all looking at me instead of you. You promised no suicide runs." "This isn't suicide. This is tactics. Watch. She'd been leading the raiders into a trap. As they pursued her, focused on bringing down the legendary Phantom 7, they'd forgotten about the asteroid field at the edge of the system. Thorn dove straight into it, her ship dancing between rocks the size of office buildings. The raiders followed, and that's when Task Force 7 struck from behind, caught between the fleet and the asteroids. With their best pilots focused on chasing a ghost through a minefield, the raiders never stood a chance. Within an hour, 30 raider ships were disabled or destroyed, the rest fleeing into hyperspace. Elysium Colony, this is Admiral Garrison. You're safe now. The colony administrator's voice was thick with emotion. Admiral, we don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me. Thank the ghost who called for help. But when they looked for Phantom 7, the battlecruiser was already gone, vanished into hyperspace like smoke on the wind. Later, in his ready room, Garrison received one last message. Thanks for the dance, Theodore. Good to know the living remember how to fight for what matters. Until next time. There would be a next time. There always was. Somewhere in the galaxy, someone would call for help that couldn't officially come. And somewhere in the dark between stars, a ghost would hear them. The tradition grew. Young pilots would hear the stories and volunteer for training exercises that happened to take them near distress calls. Supply officers would file reports about inventory discrepancies that somehow always benefited colonies in need. Communication technicians would accidentally leave certain channels open. And at the center of it all, a battlecruiser that shouldn't exist, flown by someone who'd given up everything except the one thing that mattered, the commitment to answer when others called for help. Years passed. The galaxy changed. Wars ended and new ones began. Administrations rose and fell, but the stories persisted. The ghost ship that appeared when all hope was lost, the phantom that fought for those who had no one else. Cassandra Thorn aged in the captain's chair of her beloved battlecruiser, her hair going from streaked grey to pure silver. But her hands remained steady on the controls, her voice calm over the comm channels, her aim true when lives hung in the balance. New ghosts joined her over time, other pilots who'd chosen conscience over career, flying ships that didn't officially exist, forming a phantom fleet that operated in the shadows of legitimate authority. They had no ranks, no hierarchy, just a shared understanding that some things mattered more than rules. Morrison's courier service expanded, becoming an unofficial supply line for the Phantom Fleet. Emily Garrison, now a captain herself, would sometimes lead navigation training missions that happened to provide cover for ghost operations. Even Holloway, promoted to admiral after Garrison's retirement, maintained the tradition of selective blindness when inventory went missing or ships appeared where they shouldn't be. The bureaucrats knew, of course. How could they not? But they also knew the statistics. Areas patrolled by ghosts had 40% fewer successful raider attacks. Colonies that might have been destroyed thrived because someone had answered their calls. The Phantom Fleet had saved more lives in 10 years than some official task forces had in 20. So, the game continued. Officials would publicly denounce the dangerous vigilantes operating outside the law, while privately ensuring that certain supply depots remained understocked and certain communication frequencies stayed unmonitored. Once during a particularly heated Senate hearing about the Phantom problem, a senator had demanded to know why the fleet couldn't catch these rogue pilots. The fleet admiral had responded with a perfectly straight face. "Senator, we've deployed our best resources to track these phantoms. Unfortunately, they seem to have an uncanny ability to appear exactly where our ships aren't and disappear just before we arrive. It's almost as if they have access to our operational data." The senator had huffed and puffed, but the matter was quietly dropped. On Thorn's 60th birthday, not that anyone officially knew it was her birthday, Phantom 7 received an encrypted message. "Happy birthday, Ghost. Your present is in Docking Bay 7. She'd approached cautiously, half expecting a trap even after all these years. But what she found made her actually laugh. A sound her ship hadn't heard in too long. A full maintenance crew was waiting, all volunteers, all people she'd saved over the years or their children. They swarmed over Phantom 7, replacing worn parts, upgrading systems, patching hull damage that had accumulated over decades of combat. Standing apart from the others was Emily Garrison, now bearing Admiral's insignia. "Admiral," Thorne said carefully. "Ghost," Emily replied. Then, softer, "Thank you for Centauri, for everything since. Just doing what needed doing. No, you did what was right when everyone else did what was easy." Emily handed her a data pad. "That's not a gift. It's just information that happens to be lying around. About a new raider stronghold near the Terminus systems, the kind of target that would take a whole fleet to crack." Thorne studied the data. "This would take more than one ghost. Good thing there are more than one of you now. Phantom 7 might be a legend, but Phantoms 1 through 37, that's a fleet. The bureaucrats will have a fit. Let them. Some of us remember what you taught us, that every life matters, that help should come when called for, that doing right is more important than doing what's allowed." Thorne looked at her ship, gleaming now under the maintenance crew's attention. Then at the data pad showing thousands of civilians under threat. Then at the woman whose life she'd saved, who'd grown up to save others in turn. "Send the word out," she said. "The Phantoms fly at dawn." The Battle of Terminus would go down in history as the largest gathering of the Phantom fleet ever recorded. 37 ships that didn't exist, crewed by people who weren't there, saving a colony that officially wasn't worth saving. But that's another story, and Ghost had a distress call to answer. She always did. As Phantom 7 departed Docking Bay 7 for what might have been the 1,000th time, Cassandra Thorne allowed herself a small smile. She'd lost her commission, her rank, her official place in society, but she'd kept the only thing that truly mattered, the ability to make a difference. The galaxy was vast, full of people who needed help that wouldn't come through proper channels, and as long as she could fly, as long as Phantom 7's engines would carry her between the stars, she'd be there to answer their calls. Because sometimes the best heroes are the ones who don't officially exist. Sometimes the most important battles are fought by ghosts, and sometimes, just sometimes, a stubborn woman in an obsolete battle cruiser can change the galaxy simply by refusing to stop caring. The distress call crackled through her modified receivers. "Anyone please, we're under attack, we need help, anyone?" Thorne's hands moved across her controls with practiced ease, setting course for another impossible rescue. "Phantom 7 responding. Hold on, help is coming." It always was when a ghost was listening.
Lance adjusted his cargo manifest for the third time in 10 minutes. Not because anything was wrong with it, but because waiting in customs lines apparently turned even the most patient human into a fidgeting mess. Around him, the usual symphony of Nexus Station played out in all its chaotic glory. The chittering of insectoid klaxons arguing over shipping rates, the deep harmonic hums of crystalline Zephyrians conducting business through sound frequencies that made his teeth ache, and the perpetual background noise of 1,000 different atmospheric recyclers working overtime to keep everyone breathing, something vaguely resembling their preferred air mix. "Next!" The customs agent's voice crackled through the universal translator. Though Lance had gotten good enough at reading Ulmiran body language to know the tall, silver-skinned being was having about as much fun as a root canal. The agent's 4 arms moved with mechanical precision, 2 handling paperwork, while the other 2 gestured irritably at the seemingly endless line of traders, smugglers, and legitimate business people who kept this corner of the galaxy spinning. Lance shuffled forward, his worn cargo boots squeaking against the station's polished metal floors. 23 years of hauling supplies between the outer colonies had taught him that customs officials throughout the galaxy shared one universal trait: They were all dead inside. Well, except for the ones who were literally dead, like the Necro Syndicate representatives. But they were usually pretty cheerful about it. Purpose of visit. The Ulmeran didn't look up from his screen, all four hands now dancing across holographic displays that showed Lance's cargo manifest in excruciating detail. "Just dropping off medical supplies for the Kepler colony," Lance replied, offering his most winning smile to a being who probably couldn't even see facial expressions the same way humans did. Nothing exciting. Some antibiotics, surgical equipment, a few cases of that synthetic blood substitute the outer settlements can never seem to get enough of. Duration of stay? 8 hours, maybe 10 if I can find a decent meal that won't try to eat me back. Lance glanced around the customs area, noting the usual mix of travelers. A group of Bektari scientists huddled around what looked like a containment unit, their pale blue skin flickering with the bioluminescent patterns that served as their written language. Near the far wall, a squad of Kolneth warriors stood in perfect formation, their obsidian armor making them look like living shadows with anger management issues. The customs agent finally looked up, revealing the distinctive triple pupil eyes that marked him as one of the more evolved Ulmeran subspecies. "Standard bioscan required. Step into the gate scanner." Lance nodded and walked toward the massive archway that dominated the center of the customs area. The gate scanner was a marvel of Ulmeran engineering, supposedly capable of detecting everything from concealed weapons to interdimensional parasites to that weird space fungus that made people break into spontaneous interpretive dance. The technology was so advanced that most species barely understood how it worked, which was probably why the Ulmeran charged premium rates for installing them at major trade hubs. "You know," Lance said, stepping into the scanner's energy field, "I've been through this thing probably 300 times, and it still makes me feel like I'm being slowly dissolved and reconstituted. Is that normal, or should I be worried about long-term cellular damage?" The customs agent's expression didn't change, but Lance caught the slight twitch of one of his secondary arms that probably meant amusement or irritation. With Ulmeran, it was hard to tell. The scanner hummed to life, bathing Lance in a soft blue glow that made everything look like a cheap science fiction movie from the old Earth archives. He'd been through this routine so many times, he could practically recite the standard scanner responses. "Subject cleared for standard biological parameters," followed by the all-clear tone that meant he could get on with his life and maybe find that decent meal. Instead, the scanner made a sound like a computer trying to sneeze. Then it made a different sound, like several computers having an argument. Then it went completely silent. Lance looked down at his arms, still glowing faintly blue in the scanner field, then back at the customs agent. "Is this where I should start worrying?" The Ulmeran was staring at his displays with the kind of expression usually reserved for discovering your ship's navigation computer had been replaced with a particularly stupid artificial intelligence. All four hands moved frantically across the holographic controls, pulling up diagnostic screens and error reports that flickered too fast for Lance to read. Lance said, still standing in the scanner. "Should I step out, or—" "Do not move." The customs agent's tone had shifted from bored bureaucrat to something approaching panic. Around the customs area, other travelers had started to notice the commotion. The Bektari scientists had stopped their animated discussion and were now staring at the gate scanner with the kind of scientific curiosity that usually preceded very bad things happening to whatever they were studying. The scanner hummed again, louder this time, and the blue glow intensified until Lance had to squint against the glare. Status displays around the customs area flickered and went dark, then came back online showing readouts that made absolutely no sense. Then in a voice that somehow managed to sound both mechanical and utterly bewildered, the gate scanner spoke. Biological scan complete. Subject: identification: Lance, human male. Warning: subject has survived direct contact with an apex god. Classification: impossible. Recommendation: run. The customs area went dead silent. Lance blinked a high E few times, processing what he'd just heard. I'm sorry. What was that last part? The gate scanner repeated its announcement, helpfully translating it into 43 different languages for the benefit of the increasingly agitated crowd. The Bektari scientists were now practically vibrating with excitement, their bioluminescent patterns cycling through what Lance's translation implant helpfully identified as academic profanity. The Kalneth warriors had shifted into a combat stance, which was their response to pretty much everything but was still notably intimidating. There must be some mistake, Lance said, stepping out of the scanner despite the customs agent's earlier warning. I mean, I'm just a cargo hauler. The most exciting thing that's happened to me in the last 5 years was that time I accidentally shipped a crate of Zephyrian mating crystals to a monastery. And trust me, that was more embarrassing than divine. The customs agent was now frantically typing commands into his console while speaking rapidly into what Lance assumed was some kind of emergency communicator. Around the customs area, more security personnel were arriving, including a tall figure in the distinctive robes of a station administrator. "Nobody panic," the robed figure announced in accented standard, though his voice carried the kind of authority that suggested panicking might actually be the reasonable response. "I am Administrator Zale. We are experiencing a minor technical malfunction with our scanning equipment." Minor? One of the Bektari scientists had broken away from her group and was now approaching the scanner with scientific instruments that looked disturbingly probe-like. This device is reading energy signatures that shouldn't exist in our dimensional framework. The quantum resonance patterns alone suggest interaction with entities operating on cosmic scales. Lance raised his hand tentatively. "When you say cosmic scales, are we talking like really big planets? Or more like universe-ending nightmare fuel?" The scientist's bioluminescent patterns shifted to what his translator identified as excited terror. The latter would be more accurate. Fantastic. Lance looked around the customs area, noting that what had been a routine crowd of bored travelers was rapidly becoming a gathering of very interested, very dangerous people. The Kalneth warriors were now openly displaying weapons. The Bektari scientists were setting up what looked like field research equipment, and several species he didn't recognize had materialized from wherever it was that mysterious aliens lurked when they weren't being ominous. Administrator Zale moved closer, his expression managing to convey both diplomatic concern and barely controlled panic. "Sir, I must ask you to accompany me to a more secure location while we resolve this situation." "Let me guess," Lance said. "This is the part where everyone starts treating me like I'm either incredibly dangerous or incredibly valuable, and my peaceful life of hauling medical supplies comes to a screeching halt. I'm afraid that assessment may be accurate." Lance looked back at the gate scanner, which had returned to its normal blue glow, but was now displaying readouts that looked like someone had taught mathematics to have nightmares. Around him, the crowd was growing larger and more agitated, with representatives from species he'd never seen before pushing through the customs area with the kind of purposeful movement that suggested they had plans for him that didn't involve asking politely. "You know what the really annoying part is?" Lance said, following Administrator Zale toward what he hoped was safety. "I don't even remember surviving contact with any gods, apex or otherwise. You'd think that would be the sort of thing that sticks with you." Behind them, the gate scanner announced to the growing crowd, "Quantum signature confirmed. Subject has direct exposure to void-class entity. Probability of survival, 0.0001%. Actual survival, confirmed. Explanation, insufficient data." "Well," Lance muttered as Administrator Zale hurried him toward the secure exit, "that explains absolutely nothing and makes everything infinitely worse. Just another day in paradise." The last thing he heard before the security doors closed behind them was the sound of several different alien languages, all expressing the same sentiment. They wanted to get their hands on the human who had somehow survived the impossible. And they weren't particularly interested in waiting for permission. Administrator Xile's office had clearly been designed by someone who believed that the key to diplomatic success was making everyone equally uncomfortable. The furniture managed to be simultaneously too tall for humans, too wide for Ulmeran, and apparently too geometrically impossible for anyone with a basic understanding of physics. Lance found himself perched on what might have been a chair if chairs were designed by committee, and that committee had been having a very bad day. "So," Lance said, watching Zale pace behind his desk with the fluid grace of someone whose species had evolved past the need for anxiety medication, "on a scale of 1 to completely screwed, how would you rate my current situation? Species treaties, ancient laws, and what one group described as cosmic precedent, dating back to the first silence." Lance felt a chill run down his spine that had nothing to do with the office's aggressive air conditioning. The first silence? That sounds ominous, even by the standards of my rapidly deteriorating day. Before Zale could respond, his communication console erupted in a cacophony of alerts, warning tones, and what sounded like several different alien languages, all trying to negotiate, threaten, or plead simultaneously. Through the office's reinforced windows, Lance could see the docking bay filling with ships that ranged from sleek Bektari research vessels to the angular predatory lines of Kalneth warships. "Administrator Zale," a voice crackled through the comm system, speaking accented standard, with the kind of authority that suggested disagreement was not an option. "This is Battle Commander Keth of the Kalneth Expeditionary Force. You will surrender the anomalous human immediately for military evaluation and potential weaponization." "Weaponization?" Lance looked at his hands, which appeared distressingly normal. "I can barely operate a coffee machine without causing minor explosions. What exactly are they planning to weaponize?" Another voice cut through the comm chatter, this one carrying the clinical precision of dedicated scientific inquiry. "Administrator, this is Research Prime Lux of the Bektari Collective. The human must be transferred to our custody for comprehensive study. The quantum signatures detected by your scanner suggest exposure to entities that exist outside our current understanding of reality. This represents the greatest scientific discovery in recorded history." "Or," a third voice interjected, speaking in tones that seemed to resonate from somewhere beyond normal space, "you could acknowledge that some discoveries are too dangerous for mortal minds to comprehend and remand the subject to our care before his very existence destabilizes the local cosmic framework." Lance looked at Zale. "I'm starting to think that coffee machine explosion was the high point of my technical competence." Zale's expression had shifted from diplomatic concern to the kind of grim determination usually reserved for last stands and heroic sacrifices. "Mr. Lance, I must ask, do you have any memory of an encounter that might explain these readings? Any unusual experiences? Unexplained gaps in your memory? Strange dreams involving cosmic entities or interdimensional travel?" Lance started to shake his head, then paused. There was something, lurking at the edges of his consciousness like a half-remembered nightmare. Images flashed through his mind. Darkness deeper than space, something vast and incomprehensible reaching across dimensions, the screaming of reality itself being torn apart and stitched back together. There might be something, he said slowly, but it's like trying to remember a dream while someone's hitting you with a hammer. There are fragments, but they don't make sense. Darkness, and something that was too big to exist, and... The office lights flickered, and for just a moment, Lance could swear he saw something moving in the shadows between the holographic displays. Something that definitely shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space. Zale's eyes widened. The quantum fields in this office just spiked beyond our measurement capabilities. Whatever happened to you, mister? Lance, it left you changed in ways that our technology can barely detect. Changed how, exactly? Lance stood up from the impossible chair, noting that the shadows in the office seemed to be moving independently of any light source. Because I really feel like I should know if I'm some kind of cosmic anomaly walking around in human skin. Before Zale could answer, the office's security systems activated with a series of warning klaxons that could probably be heard in the next star system. Through the reinforced windows, Lance saw Kolneth warriors in full combat armor advancing through the docking bay, while Bektari scientists deployed scanning equipment that looked less like research tools and more like the kind of devices used to contain things that reality preferred to forget about. "We need to move," Zale said, his diplomatic composure finally cracking. "Now." "Move where?" Lance asked, following the administrator toward what he hoped was an exit and not some kind of interdimensional garbage disposal. In case you haven't noticed, we're on a space station surrounded by people who want to either study me, weaponize me, or possibly prevent me from accidentally destroying the universe. "The maintenance levels," Zale replied, opening a concealed panel that revealed a narrow corridor lined with pipes, conduits, and the kind of mechanical systems that kept a space station from becoming a very expensive tomb. Station security protocols require multiple escape routes for administrative personnel. The various factions will be monitoring standard exits, but they may not immediately think to check the infrastructure levels. Lance squeezed into the maintenance corridor, immediately regretting every meal he'd eaten in the past month. "You know, when I got up this morning, the biggest challenge I expected to face was finding a decent place to get my ship's atmospheric recycler serviced. This is definitely not an improvement." Behind them, the sounds of Lance's office being thoroughly searched by multiple armed factions echoed through the station's ventilation system. Apparently, the various groups had decided that diplomatic negotiations were less efficient than simply taking what they wanted and sorting out the legal implications later. The maintenance corridors of Nexus Station were a maze of technical systems that served the needs of dozens of different species, which meant the environmental controls were set to compromise that satisfies no one. Lance found himself sweating in air that was too humid for human comfort, while breathing an atmospheric mix that tasted faintly of ozone and regret. "There's an emergency docking port in Section C-15, Zale explained, navigating the narrow passages with the confidence of someone who had clearly planned for this exact scenario. "If we can reach it without being detected, you might be able to escape the station before the various factions realize you've left the administrative levels." "And then what?" Lance asked, trying not to think about the fact that he could hear multiple sets of footsteps in the corridors behind them, along with the distinctive whine of energy weapons charging. "Even if I get off the station, there are enough ships out there to blockade half the sector. Where exactly am I supposed to run to?" As if in answer to his question, a familiar voice echoed through the maintenance corridor's comm system. "Lance, you magnificent idiot, where the hell are you?" Lance stopped so suddenly that Zale nearly collided with him. "Ren? Of course it's me. Who else would be crazy enough to try stealing you out from under the noses of 3 different military forces and whatever those creepy guys in the impossible ships are supposed to be?" Ren Blackstone had been running cargo through the outer systems for almost as long as Lance had, though her definition of cargo was considerably more flexible, and her relationship with interstellar law was best described as complicated. She was also one of the few people in the galaxy who Lance trusted completely, mostly because she'd had plenty of opportunities to sell him out over the years and had consistently chosen profit over betrayal only when it didn't actually hurt him. "How did you even know what was happening?" Lance asked, following Zale toward what he hoped was the emergency docking port and not a very elaborate trap. "Are you kidding? Half the sector's been lighting up with chatter about some human who apparently survived getting cozy with cosmic entities. When they mentioned Nexus Station and a cargo hauler named Lance, I figured it was either you or someone with your exact same talent for stumbling into impossible situations." They reached the emergency docking port just as the sounds of pursuit echoed from multiple directions. Through the small viewport, Lance could see Ren's ship, the Wandering Star, docked and ready. The ship was a modified light freighter that had been upgraded with so many aftermarket systems that it barely qualified as the same class of vessel anymore. It was also, Lance knew, one of the fastest ships in this part of the galaxy, when Ren decided that speed was more important than structural integrity. "The docking seal is secure," Zale reported, checking his portable scanner. "But I'm detecting multiple assault teams converging on this section. You have perhaps 3 minutes before they breach the emergency barriers." Lance turned to the administrator, who had risked his career and possibly his life to help a complete stranger escape what was rapidly becoming an interstellar incident. "Thank you. I don't know why you're helping me, but thank you." Zale's expression was grim. "Because whatever you survived, whatever changed you, it's something that the galaxy isn't ready for. The factions gathering here aren't interested in understanding what happened to you. They want to control it, weaponize it, or contain it. None of those options end well for anyone." Lance nodded and stepped through the airlock into Ren's ship, immediately feeling the familiar comfort of worn deck plates and the gentle hum of well-maintained engines. Ren was already at the pilot station, her hands dancing over controls, while her eyes tracked the tactical displays showing the growing fleet around the station. "So," she said without looking up, "want to explain why half the known galaxy suddenly decided you're the most interesting human alive?" "I honestly have no idea," Lance replied, strapping himself into the co-pilot seat. "Apparently, I survived something called direct contact with an Apex God, but I don't remember any of it." "Apex God?" Ren's hands paused over the controls. "That's either the best cover story I've ever heard, or we're in significantly more trouble than I thought." Through the ship's viewports, Lance could see the Kolneth fleet moving into intercept positions, while the Bektari vessels deployed scanning arrays that looked capable of analyzing individual atoms from several light-years away. In the distance, other ships were arriving, their configurations unlike anything in the standard databases. "Ren," Lance said quietly, "I think we might be in more trouble than anyone thought." The Wandering Star detached from Nexus Station just as the first energy blasts began lighting up the space around them. The Wandering Star's engines screamed in protest as Ren pushed them well beyond their rated specifications, weaving through the growing fleet around Nexus Station like a caffeinated insect avoiding very large, very angry swatters. Energy blasts lit up the space around them in brilliant displays that would have been beautiful if they weren't specifically designed to turn the ship into expanding clouds of superheated debris. "You know," Wren said, executing a maneuver that definitely wasn't in any piloting manual, "when I said I owed you a favor, I was thinking more along the lines of buying you dinner or helping you move furniture, not fleeing from what appears to be the beginning of an interstellar incident." Lance gripped his seat as the ship shuddered through another near miss from a Kolneth plasma cannon. "Trust me, this wasn't exactly on my agenda either. This morning, my biggest concern was whether the coffee maker in my ship was finally going to give up and die." "Well, look on the bright side," Wren replied, spinning the ship through a debris field that had probably been another vessel until very recently. "That coffee maker is definitely the least of your problems now." The tactical display showed at least 15 different ships in pursuit, representing species from across the known galaxy, and a few that Lance was pretty sure weren't in any official databases. The Kolneth vessels maintained their characteristic aggressive formation, while the Bektari ships moved with the methodical precision of scientists who had decided that capturing their specimen was worth risking interdimensional war. But it was the other ships that worried Lance most. Vessels with configurations that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them, energy signatures that made the ship's sensors emit confused electronic whimpers, and what appeared to be at least one craft that was technically inside out, but somehow still functional. "Wren," Lance said, watching the sensor readings fluctuate in ways that violated several laws of physics, "I think I'm starting to remember what happened to me." "Good timing," Wren muttered, diving the ship toward a nearby asteroid belt while energy blasts turned chunks of rock into impressive but short-lived light shows. "Because I could really use an explanation for why that Kolneth dreadnought is charging weapons that aren't supposed to exist for another 1,000 years." The memories came in fragments, like trying to assemble a puzzle while being hit by lightning. Lance saw himself on the bridge of a deep space exploration vessel, the kind of ship that pushed beyond the edges of mapped space, looking for new worlds, new resources, or just new ways for humans to prove they belonged among the stars. The mission had been routine: investigate unusual energy readings in an unexplored system, collect data, and return home with another small piece of the cosmic puzzle filled in. Instead, they'd found something that shouldn't exist. "The Void Sovereign," Lance said, the name emerging from buried memories like something clawing its way out of a grave. "We encountered something called the Void Sovereign." Wren glanced at him while simultaneously piloting through an asteroid field and dodging weapons fire from multiple directions. "That sounds ominous, even by cosmic horror standards. What exactly is a Void Sovereign?" Lance closed his eyes, letting the memories flow despite the nauseating sensation of remembering something his mind had desperately tried to forget. Not what? Who? An entity that exists between dimensions, feeding on the spaces where reality gets thin. Our ship's sensors detected it first as a gravitational anomaly, then as something that was bending space-time just by existing. The wandering star shook as a particularly close energy blast overloaded the shields, and Wren cursed in 3 languages while rerouting power from non-essential systems. Behind them, the pursuit fleet was gaining ground, and Lance could see additional ships arriving at the edge of the system. "So, what happened when you met this thing?" Wren asked, executing a turn that probably added several new stress fractures to the ship's hull. "It was dying," Lance said, the memory now flowing with crystal clarity. "Something had wounded it, driven it from its native dimension into ours, and the transition was killing it. But a dying Void Sovereign is still incredibly dangerous. Its death throes were tearing holes in reality, creating rifts that led to spaces where the laws of physics were more like friendly suggestions. Through the ship's viewports, Lance could see that their pursuers weren't just following them anymore. The various fleets were starting to engage each other, apparently deciding that eliminating the competition was as important as capturing their target. Energy beams crossed the void between vessels, creating a three-dimensional battlefield that was rapidly becoming a free-for-all. My crew tried to retreat, Lance continued, his voice growing quiet as the darker memories surfaced. But the Sovereign's death was creating a cascade effect. Reality was unraveling in a sphere that expanded outward from the entity, and our ship was caught in the wave. The crew, they didn't make it. One by one, they were pulled into spaces that existed outside normal physics. Wren's expression had grown grim as she listened, though her piloting remained flawlessly aggressive. "But you survived. How?" "I didn't," Lance said simply. "Not really." When the cascade reached me, when I felt reality starting to dissolve around me, something inside me responded. I absorbed part of the Sovereign's essence, took its dying energy into myself to try to stabilize the collapse. As if responding to his words, the lights on the ship's bridge flickered, and the shadows in the corners seemed to deepen in ways that had nothing to do with the illumination. Lance felt something stirring within him, a presence that was both part of him and utterly alien. "Lance," Wren said, her voice carefully controlled, "the ship's quantum field detectors are going crazy. Whatever you absorbed, it's still there, isn't it?" "I think so." Lance looked at his hands, and for just a moment, he could swear he saw something moving beneath his skin. Patterns of darkness that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. The absorption saved me, but it also wiped my memory. I've been living with this thing inside me for years without knowing it. The tactical display suddenly lit up with new contacts, ships emerging from what appeared to be empty space, but which Lance now recognized as the kind of dimensional rifts the Void Sovereign's death had created. These weren't any of the species they'd been dealing with before. These vessels moved with a purpose that transcended normal physics, their very presence causing reality to ripple like water. "Those are apex entities," Lance said, the knowledge flowing from memories he hadn't known he possessed. "Beings that exist on cosmic scales, the kind of entities that the Void Sovereign was fleeing from. They've been drawn here by the disturbance." "Drawn here by you mean?" Wren said, her piloting becoming even more erratic as she tried to avoid the new arrivals while still evading the original pursuit fleet. The quantum signature from the gate scanner, Lance realized, it wasn't just detecting what I'd survived. It was broadcasting it. Every cosmic entity in this part of the galaxy now knows that someone survived direct contact with Void Sovereign essence. One of the Apex entity ships moved toward them with the kind of motion that suggested it wasn't entirely bound by normal space-time, and Lance felt the presence within him respond with something that might have been recognition or might have been fear. The ship's sensors registered energy readings that shouldn't be possible, and several of the pursuing vessels simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, but rather edited out of reality, as if they had never been there at all. "Wren," Lance said, feeling power building within him like a storm he couldn't control. "I think I'm about to do something that's either going to save us or make everything infinitely worse." "Story of my life," Wren replied, though her knuckles were white as she gripped the controls. "Just try to aim whatever cosmic horror you're about to unleash at the people shooting at us, and not at my ship." Lance felt the Void Sovereign's essence surge within him, responding to the presence of the Apex entities and the immediate threat to his survival. Reality around the ship began to fluctuate, and for just a moment, Lance could see the universe as the Void Sovereign had. a vast tapestry of interconnected dimensions, with threads of possibility that could be plucked, rewoven, or cut entirely. He reached out with senses he didn't remember having, grasped one of those threads, and pulled. Space around the wandering star folded in on itself, creating a bubble of altered reality where the laws of physics answered to Lance's will rather than their usual constraints. The pursuing ships found themselves firing at empty space as the freighter slipped sideways through dimensions, while the Apex Entity vessels paused in what might have been surprise or approval. "Well," Wren said, staring at sensor readings that made no sense whatsoever. "That's new." Lance slumped in his seat, feeling drained in ways that went beyond physical exhaustion. "I think I'm starting to understand why that gate scanner recommended running. This power, whatever I absorbed from the Void Sovereign, it's not meant for human minds to contain." "But you're containing it anyway," Wren pointed out, setting course for the outer system while reality slowly stabilized around them. That has to count for something. Through the viewports, Lance could see that their escape had attracted even more attention. The space around Nexus Station was now filled with vessels from species he'd never heard of, and several more of those reality-bending Apex Entity ships were materializing from whatever dimension they called home. "I don't think we're running anymore," Lance said quietly. "I think we're being herded." Herded toward what? Lance felt the presence within him stir again, and suddenly he knew the answer with a certainty that came from somewhere beyond human understanding. Toward a choice. The Apex Entities aren't here to capture me or study me. They're here to see what I'm going to become. The wandering star flew deeper into the outer system, pursued by forces that represented the full spectrum of cosmic power, while Lance struggled to understand what he was becoming and whether that transformation would save or damn everything he'd ever cared about. The rendezvous point turned out to be a dead system on the edge of charted space, where the corpses of 3 planets orbited a dying star, like cosmic tombstones. Lance had known they were being guided here, but seeing the assembled fleet that waited for them still made his breath catch. Ships from dozens of species filled the void, from familiar human frigates to exotic vessels that seemed to be constructed from crystallized music and controlled nightmare. But it was the Apex Entities that dominated the space, their impossible ships existing in states that made Lance's eyes water just from looking at them. One appeared to be built from folded time itself. Another seemed to exist as a mathematical concept given physical form. And a third was technically a living creature the size of a space station that had learned to travel between stars by convincing reality it was actually a ship. "Well," Wren said, her voice carefully steady as she piloted the wandering star into the midst of this cosmic convention. "I've seen some strange things in my time hauling cargo through the outer systems, but this is definitely going on my list of experiences I never want to repeat." Lance felt the presence within him responding to the gathered entities, and suddenly he could sense their attention like a weight pressing against his consciousness. They weren't hostile, exactly, but they were evaluating him with the kind of cosmic patience that measured time in geological epochs. They're not here to fight, he realized. They're here to witness something. Before Wren could ask what, space around the wandering star began to shimmer, and Lance found himself standing on what appeared to be a platform made of crystallized starlight. Wren was beside him, looking remarkably calm for someone who had just been transported across space by entities that existed partially outside the normal universe. "Greetings, fragment of the Void Sovereign," a voice spoke, though Lance couldn't identify its source. The words seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, carrying harmonics that resonated in dimensions his human brain wasn't designed to perceive. "We have come to observe your choosing." "My choosing?" Lance looked around the platform, seeing representatives from the various fleets arranged in concentric circles around them. The Kalneth warriors stood in perfect formation, their weapons at ready but not aimed. The Bekatari scientists had deployed instruments that were recording everything, their bioluminescent patterns cycling through what his translator identified as academic excitement mixed with existential terror. Even the more exotic species seemed to be holding their breath, waiting for something momentous. "You carry within you the essence of one who fell to preserve this dimensional framework," another voice explained. This one coming from the ship that was technically a living creature. The Void Sovereign did not die meaninglessly. It chose to sacrifice itself to seal a breach that would have allowed entities from the far dark to enter this reality. Lance felt a chill that had nothing to do with the platform's non-existent atmosphere. The far dark? "Places where existence goes to die," Ren muttered. "Great. As if cosmic entities and reality-bending powers weren't complicated enough." The first voice continued, and now Lance could see its source. A being that appeared to be made of compressed galaxies, with stars for eyes and nebulae for hair. The sovereign sacrifice created a seal, but seals require guardians. You have become that guardian, whether by choice or chance. Now you must decide what kind of guardian you will be. "I don't understand," Lance said, though part of him was beginning to grasp the implications. "Are you saying I'm supposed to protect the universe from invasion by nightmare entities from the spaces between realities?" "Not the universe," the galaxy being corrected. "This dimensional cluster. These several million galaxies where life has learned to exist within the constraints of physics as you understand them. The far dark hungers for such order, seeks to reduce it to the chaos that preceded existence." Around the platform, the assembled fleets waited in silence, while Lance processed information that no human mind should have been able to contain. He could feel the Void Sovereign's essence within him, not as an invader, but as a willing merger. Two consciousness becoming something greater than their individual parts. "But here's the thing," Lance said, surprising himself with how steady his voice sounded. "I'm still human. Whatever power I've absorbed, whatever cosmic responsibility has been dumped on me, I'm still just a guy who hauls cargo between colonies and can't figure out how to work his coffee machine properly." The assembled entities seemed to consider this, and Lance felt something that might have been approval rippling through the cosmic gathering. "Perhaps," said the being made of crystallized time, "that is precisely why you are suited for this role." The Void Sovereign was ancient, powerful, and alone. It fought the far dark through cosmic ages until the burden overwhelmed it. But you are connected to smaller things: friends, simple pleasures, the satisfaction of a job completed. These connections may prove to be a strength where cosmic power was insufficient. Lance looked at Ren, who shrugged in the way she always did when faced with situations that exceeded normal human comprehension. "Your call, but for what it's worth, you've always been good at protecting the things you care about. Scaling up to protecting everything might not be as different as you think." Lance felt the choice crystallizing in his mind, and with it came understanding. He didn't have to become some cosmic guardian divorced from humanity. He could remain who he was while accepting the responsibility that had been thrust upon him. The Void Sovereign's essence would provide the power, but his human connections would provide the wisdom to use it properly. "All right," he said, addressing the assembled entities. "I'll do it. But I do it my way. I'm I'm not abandoning my life to become some cosmic sentinel standing eternal watch in the void. I'll keep hauling cargo, visiting friends, dealing with broken coffee machines. And when the far dark tries to breach the seal, I'll be there to stop it. The approval that rippled through the gathering was almost tangible, and Lance felt the Void Sovereign's essence settling more comfortably within him. No longer a foreign presence, but a partner in the strange life he was about to lead. 6 months later, Lance was back on Nexus Station, delivering a routine shipment of medical supplies to the outer colonies. The customs agent was different now, a young Ulmiran, who probably hadn't been briefed on the previous incident, and the gate scanner hummed through its routine bioscan without incident. Well, mostly without incident. Biological scan complete, the scanner announced. Subject identification, Lance, human male. Note, subject is registered Cosmic Guardian, Dimensional Cluster 15, Alpha. Threat level, beneficial. Recommendation, offer complimentary beverages. Lance grinned as other travelers in the customs line turned to stare at him with expressions ranging from awe to confusion. "I'll take a coffee," he told the scanner, "but fair warning, I still haven't figured out how to work most coffee machines without causing minor disasters." Behind him in line, a young human woman was staring at her own bioscan results with the kind of bewildered expression Lance remembered all too well. The scanner was displaying readings that shouldn't exist, and in the distance, he could hear the familiar sound of various alien factions expressing sudden and intense interest in capturing a human who had apparently survived something impossible. Lance sighed and walked over to the confused woman. "First time having cosmic powers manifest. In public?" he asked cheerfully. "How did you?" "Lucky guess. Come on, let me introduce you to some friends of mine. We've got a lot to talk about. And judging by the number of ships that just requested emergency docking clearance, we don't have much time to do it." As they walked toward the exit, Lance couldn't help but smile. Apparently, his encounter with the Void Sovereign had done more than just give him cosmic powers. It had awakened something in humanity itself, something that had been dormant until the right catalyst came along. The far dark might be patient, but it was about to discover that humans were remarkably good at being thoroughly, persistently, and creatively inconvenient. And Lance had a feeling that was going to make all the difference.
The galactic soldiers stood in a perfect line, armored in plates that shimmered like molten steel beneath the vast dome of the Imperial Arena. Their boots struck the floor in unison, a metallic rhythm that carried through the echoing space as banners of conquest unfurled from the ceiling. Around them, tiers of alien dignitaries and spectators leaned forward from their crystalline seats, their many eyes gleaming, their mandibles twitching, their voices a chorus of contempt and curiosity. This was the Empire's stage, the theater where every newly discovered species was brought to heel. It was here that whole civilizations had bent their knees before the Empire's chosen champions. And today, humanity was expected to follow. At the center of the arena, lit by shafts of pale light from above, stood the Marine. He was alone, without armor, without ceremony, dressed in fatigues scuffed with dust from the transport that had delivered him. His stance was relaxed, almost lazy, with his hands folded behind his back and his weight resting on one leg. His hair was regulation short, his jaw dusted with stubble, his eyes a calm blue that held no fear. He wore a smile, not wide, not mocking, but a polite curl at the corner of his lips that unsettled the gathered audience more than any snarl of defiance could. The lead galactic soldier, taller than 3 men stacked atop one another, raised his spear of crackling plasma. His voice thundered through the translators, sharp and guttural. "Kneel, human. The Empire accepts no other posture from the conquered. Kneel or you will die." The Marine tilted his head slightly, as though considering the command with the same mild interest one might give a waiter offering soup of the day. His smile deepened a fraction. "That's adorable," he said softly, his words carrying easily through the translation systems. "You practicing your tough guy voice? Or is this your full-time gig?" Ripples of confusion spread through the audience. Some laughed, assuming the man was pleading in some primitive code. Others hissed in outrage at his insolence. A cluster of scribe species hurriedly jotted notes on glowing slates, their tendrils shaking with agitation. Only one, an ancient scaled creature with milky eyes, frowned in silence, as if he had heard such tones before in darker times. The soldier snarled, stepping closer, his armor's servos hissing. "You misunderstand. This is no choice. All who come before us kneel. Every world, every fleet, every..." "Yeah, see?" The Marine interrupted gently, rocking back on his heel. "That's where you've got the wrong read on us. We don't really do the kneeling thing back home. Not unless there's a proposal involved. And trust me, you're not my type." The audience erupted, some with laughter, others with rage. The soldier's eyes burned with hatred, but beneath the fury, a flicker of uncertainty lingered. This man was unarmed, outnumbered, outmatched. He should have been begging. Instead, he smiled. The Marine's voice carried the cadence of small-town America, warm and inflected with humor. Yet every syllable was deliberate, measured, like a chess move disguised as a joke. He raised his chin, looking up at the towering figure before him. "Back on Earth, we've got a saying. Don't write checks your mouth can't cash. You might want to think about that before you go waving pointy sticks at strangers." The soldier jabbed the spear forward, stopping just short of the Marine's chest. Expecting a flinch, a stumble backward, the human mask of fear cracking wide. The Marine did not move. His smile remained, steady and infuriating. The tension of the moment stretched taut, until the soldier snarled again and withdrew the weapon. Above them, a booming voice from the Emperor's dais announced, "Humanity will be tested. If this one survives the trial, perhaps his people may be permitted the honor of servitude. But if he fails, their world shall burn." The Marine finally moved, shrugging as though the stakes were nothing more than a poker game at a smoky bar. He ran a thumb along his jaw, squinting up toward the Emperor's dais. "Well, that's one way to make friends. Where I come from, we usually start with a handshake, maybe a cup of coffee. But hey, you do you." The laughter that followed was not all cruel this time. Some in the audience were genuinely amused, bewildered by this man who met threats with wit instead of terror. Yet beneath the surface, an unease spread, subtle as smoke. The soldier barked again, "You will kneel!" and slammed his spear into the ground, sending a shockwave of light across the arena floor. Dust rose in spirals. The Marine stood firm, his boots unmoving. "Nah," he said with quiet finality. "We don't kneel, we bury." The words hung in the air like a blade. For the first time, the spectators felt the smile not as insolence but as omen. Something old and primal stirred in their instincts, warning them that this man, though soft-spoken, was no lamb led to slaughter. The trial commenced. The soldier lunged, swinging his spear in a blur of deadly arcs. The Marine sidestepped with casual precision, his movements efficient, stripped of flourish. He did not strike back immediately. He observed, studied, let the alien reveal his patterns. He spoke between dodges, his breath unbroken. "Funny thing, back home we've got kids who wrestle gators for sport. Nasty critters, mean teeth. But once you know their role, you just flip them on their backs and it's game over." He ducked, pivoted, and when the soldier overextended, the Marine caught the haft of the spear with bare hands and twisted. With a sharp crack, the weapon tore free, spinning across the sand. The Marine didn't keep it. He let it fall, useless, as if to say he needed no tool but himself. Gasps rolled through the audience. The soldier roared and lunged barehanded, claws flashing. The Marine pivoted again, driving a precise elbow into the creature's chest plate. The impact resounded like a cannon shot, sending the alien staggering backward. And still he smiled. He glanced up toward the dais, addressing the Emperor himself now. You see, here's the thing about humans. We're not the biggest, not the fastest, but we adapt, we endure, and we don't stop until the fight's done. Ask history. Hell, ask the British. The translation